The Clone Wars were among the bloodiest conflicts in galactic history, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. From the very first engagement on Geonosis to the Outer Rim sieges that pushed the galaxy to its breaking point, the conflict tested the courage and resolve of both the Republic and the Separatists. But some battles stood out for their sheer scale, brutality, and casualty rates. Here are the 10 worst battles of the Clone Wars in no particular order. The Battle of Geonosis was the spark that ignited the Clone Wars, marking the galaxy's descent into full-scale conflict. It began when Obi-Wan Kenobi uncovered Count Dooku's secret droid factories and plans to create a separatist army, only for him to be captured. With Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala following suit, the Jedi Council responded with a massive assault to disrupt the Separatists and rescue the trio before they could be killed. Over 200 Jedi Knights led the charge, supported by the newly developed clone army. The dusty, rocky terrain of Geonosis soon became a chaotic battlefield as swarms of battle droids and Geonosian warriors overwhelmed the Republic forces. The Grand Army of the Republic faced a trial by fire, going up against overwhelming numbers. The Republic's victory came at an enormous cost. In fact, it's estimated that only about 30 of the 200-plus Jedi that went to Geonosis survived. Many experienced knights and masters lost their lives within the first few hours of the war. For the clones, casualties were also in the thousands. Geonosis set the tone for what the war would become, a brutal, costly conflict that would consume the galaxy. But we could almost make Geonosis into 2 entries on our list, considering how devastating the second Battle of Geonosis also was. After the Separatists re-established their droid factories on the planet, the Republic was forced to launch a massive assault to shut them down once again. Unlike the first Battle of the Clone Wars, this campaign was far more coordinated, but no less brutal. The battle began with the landing at Point Rain, one of the bloodiest engagements of the entire war. Republic forces, led by Jedi Generals Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, faced heavy anti-aircraft fire as they attempted to establish a landing zone. Gunships were shot down in droves, scattering clone troopers across the barren, rocky terrain. Any survivors found themselves immediately under fire from entrenched separatist positions as they attempted to regroup. The clones fought valiantly, pushing through waves of droid soldiers under relentless bombardment. Casualties were immense, with entire squads wiped out as they tried to advance through the harsh desert environment. It wasn't until the Republic coordinated a multi-pronged assault, combining heavy artillery, air support, and Jedi leadership, that they managed to breach the Separatist defenses and capture Archduke Poggle the Lesser. Atrakan was once a lush, forested planet known for its natural beauty, but it became a nightmare during the Clone Wars. The world happened to be rich in a heavy metal called dunium, which was used primarily in starship hull construction, a valuable resource during wartime, as you can imagine. The Separatists conquered Atrakan and engaged in a poisoned well policy, releasing a biochemical plague into the planet's water table that killed 90% of the population. The few survivors relocated to neighboring worlds, and many of them blamed the Jedi. Of course, the Republic did attempt to liberate the world, and were only successful through a series of strikes called Operation Katabatic. The once beautiful planet had been left a desolate, bombed-out husk by the second year of the Clone Wars after almost an entire year of fighting. The Republic ultimately secured the planet, but it was a hollow victory. Atrakan was left uninhabitable. Its oceans, those that hadn't boiled away, were now large bodies of poisonous water, and the poisonous air carried what remained of the chemical weapons that were used. The only life forms capable of living on Atrakan were the diehards, large burrowing insects that had adapted to eating the poison. Hypori is often remembered as an infamous death trap for the Jedi. A barren, rocky world, Hypori was rich with minerals that made it the suitable home of a large Techno-Union droid factory in the early days of the Clone Wars. The battle was initially intended as a Republic raid on the Separatists' droid foundries, based on intelligence gathered by Jedi Master Dockman Barrick, who led the attack. Accompanying him was an elite strike team including Jedi Masters Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shaak Ti, Aayla Secura, and Kakruk, as well as the Jedi Knight Tar Seer and Padawan Shaw Gi, on top of a large clone force aboard multiple Acclamator-class assault ships. However, the Separatists were waiting for the attack, and what the Jedi didn't know was that General Grievous was there. At this point, the cyborg Jedi Killer hadn't been revealed to the Republic. Despite being active since the Battle of Geonosis, no one had encountered Grievous and lived to tell the tale. The Battle of Hypori was an ambush and quickly became a slaughter. Grievous unleashed overwhelming waves of battle droids, cutting down clone troopers with terrifying efficiency. The Jedi were cornered, exhausted, and overpowered. As Grievous's ground forces advanced on the wreckage of an acclamator where the Jedi survivors were held up, Grievous personally defeated Dockman Barrick as he contacted Obi-Wan Kenobi for help. Grievous ordered his droids to stop firing, wishing to enter the wreckage and engage the Jedi personally. Going toe-to-toe with all of the Jedi at once, Grievous killed 2 more of them while putting the others on the back foot. It was only the arrival of Captain Fordo in the Munilus 10 that allowed Masters Mundi, Ti, Secura, and Kakruk to barely escape with their lives. Hypori became a cautionary tale, a symbol of Grievous's ferocity and the dangers of underestimating the Separatists. The Battle of Serish is remembered as one of the most devastating losses for the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. Following their victory at the Battle of Duro, the Republic pursued retreating Separatist forces to Serish, where they had heavily fortified their position with droid armies and a powerful anti-aircraft cannon atop a mountain. Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi and Commander Cody led the 212th Attack Battalion in a daring assault. As part of their plan, Kenobi divided his forces, leading an attack at one front while Cody oversaw another area of the clones' campaign. Just 30 seconds before they would have landed, Cody's gunship was shot down, but the ever-resilient commander pushed on and was able to commandeer the large cannon on his own, turning it on the remaining droid forces. However, the Separatists soon launched a massive counter-offensive, routing the Republic forces. Thousands of clones were killed, including entire companies of the 212th. Amid the carnage, Clone Commando and Captain Gregor went missing after attempting to aid wounded soldiers. Presumed dead, Gregor would later resurface on Abofar, suffering from amnesia and post-traumatic stress. Despite initial victories, the Battle of Serish ended in disaster for the Republic, marking one of the war's most brutal engagements. The Twi'lek homeworld of Ryloth became a flashpoint during the early days of the Clone Wars. The Separatists invaded, and Wat Tambor of the Techno Union plundered their treasures. Though Ryloth wasn't particularly rich in natural resources, it sat on a key hyperspace lane and offered something else: a large slave labor force in the Twi'leks. In fact, the droids would also use them as shields to deter Republic attacks. That's if they could even break through a massive blockade around the planet. After several attempts and many ships lost, the Republic finally broke through, but would go on to endure further heavy losses on the surface. One of the most infamous battles during the Ryloth campaign was led by Jedi General Ima Gunday and Clone Captain Keeley, along with Twi'lek resistance fighter Cham Syndulla. Trapped within the walls of a mountain range, General Dai's garrison made a final stand along a passageway so that the Twi'lek freedom fighters could escape with their families. However, the entire Outer Rim garrison would be destroyed, resulting in the deaths of both General Dai and Captain Keeley, but not before Republic blockade runners broke through and delivered much-needed relief supplies to the surface. Shortly thereafter, the Republic returned to Ryloth with a force led by Jedi Generals Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin Skywalker to liberate the planet once and for all. However, much to the dismay of Cham Syndulla and the other Twi'leks, The Republic maintained a presence on the planet that would turn into an occupation during the early days of the Galactic Empire. The Clone Wars reached their climax with the Battle of Coruscant. With much of the Republic's forces spread thin during the Outer Rim sieges, General Grievous launched an unprecedented attack on the Republic's capital world. The goal was to capture Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, aiming to cripple the Republic's leadership while also a ploy to bring Anakin Skywalker closer to the dark side of the Force. The battle was fought on multiple fronts. In space, a fleet of over 1,000 starships engaged in massive dogfights, with Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi leading the charge. On the surface, clone troopers fought to repel a massive droid force attempting to breach key districts of the planet. Though the Republic succeeded in rescuing Palpatine and repelling the attack, the cost was catastrophic. Coruscant was left scarred, with districts destroyed and countless lives lost. The battle marked the beginning of the end of the Clone Wars, paving the way for the rise of the Empire. Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld, became a critical battleground during the final days of the war. The Separatists invaded the planet, aiming to exploit its strategic location on a junction of several hyperspace routes, and abundance of natural resources. Republic forces led by Yoda, Luminara Unduli, and Quinlan Vos joined the Wookiees in defending their home. Droids launched amphibious assaults on the Tree City of Kachiro, supported by heavy artillery, while clones and Wookiees fought to repel them. The forest itself also became a deadly war zone, with combatants ambushed from above and below. Despite their success, after a lot of back-and-forth fighting, Republic forces suffered heavy casualties. And even though they secured a hard-fought victory, the battle was overshadowed by tragedy. Order 66 was enacted during the fighting, forcing Yoda to flee as the clones turned on their Jedi commanders. Kashyyyk would be totally subjugated by the Empire several weeks later and endured a prolonged period of occupation and enslavement. Megiddo was a frozen world with vast resources, making it a key target for both sides. As a result, the harsh world was home to one of the longest battles of the Clone Wars, lasting over 2 years. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine declared Megiddo part of a triad of evil, along with Felucia and Seleucami. These were prime targets whose fall would help end the war. As such, the Republic launched a grueling campaign to seize control of Megiddo's crystal mines, with Jedi General Ki-Adi-Mundi leading the assault alongside Commander Bacara and the 41st Elite Corps, also known as the Galactic Marines, one of the harshest units in the Grand Army of the Republic. The battle was a siege, with clones fighting through icy trenches and heavily fortified Separatist defenses. The harsh climate added another layer of difficulty, freezing equipment and exhausting troops. The Separatists made use of advanced war machines, turning the icy terrain into a killing field. During the final Republic assault on Megiddo, Order 66 was enacted, Ki-Adi-Mundi was betrayed and executed by his own troops. After Mundi's death, the newly established Galactic Empire would go on to conquer the planet. Claiming it on behalf of Emperor Palpatine, the Imperial war machine would keep strict control over Megiddo, extensively strip mining the planet for Durasteel, which was used in the construction of starships. Umbara was one of the war's darkest, literally, and most controversial campaigns. Known as the Shadow World, Umbara's dense, bioluminescent forests created a disorienting environment for the 501st Legion and 212th Attack Battalion, who were tasked with capturing the planet, whose government had withdrawn from the Republic in favor of the Separatists. Jedi General Pong Krell took command of the campaign, but his brutal and reckless tactics led to catastrophic losses. Clones were sent into deadly ambushes with poor tactics that resulted in high casualty rates. With Krell showing little regard for their lives, morale plummeted, and the clones began to question their orders. Krell's true intentions were eventually revealed. He planned to gain the favor of Count Dooku and become his new apprentice. The 501st were forced to arrest and execute their own commander, ending one of the war's most disastrous campaigns. Jabeam was a rain-soaked hellscape that became one of the Republic's greatest defeats. The Republic intervened in a civil war raging on the planet, wishing to preserve its vital economic interests in Jabeimi mining, while the Separatists backed an anti-Republic faction with arms and experimental battle droids. Republic forces initially made significant gains, but they overextended their limited resources. The CIS, led by Asajj Ventress and the Jabeim native Alto Stratus, quickly gained the upper hand, even capturing ARC Trooper Alpha-17 and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who were presumed dead after an explosion. Clone forces were generally unprepared for the atrocious conditions on Jabeim, their new heavy AT-AT walkers stuck in the unforgiving muddy plains. Meanwhile, the Jabeimi were fighting in the environment they were familiar with. The presumed casualties on Jabeim included over 9,000 clone troopers, that's the equivalent of an entire clone trooper legion, on top of 27 Jedi, and half of the allied Jabeim forces. Anakin Skywalker, torn between loyalty and orders, was forced to make the difficult choice to evacuate the world, abandoning Jabeim and its people in what was remembered as one of the Republic's most crushing losses.